All right, let's talk some Illinois football things specifically. Joey Wagner joins us as we preview Illinois against Iowa. And Joey, I don't think it's hyperbole to say this is a turning point game potentially, a rival game. I know we talked about Wisconsin was. Now this one can make it even more so. What an opportunity for Illinois! 6:30 under the lights, 5-1, ranked potentially, and the potential to beat Iowa for the first time since 2008. Now I know they've only played 8 times since then, but still, that is a long, long losing streak. So it's not hyperbole to think this is the biggest game for Illinois football in what, 10, 11 years?
Yeah, it still feels weird. I try to be really measured about those, and it still feels really weird to say that, but yeah, I think so. And I think I like the arrival game. I feel like it's probably like the way you put it. That's probably the best way I can think because I mean, winning this game does go a long way, or an important way in helping you if you want to try to win the West. But I just think it's Illinois football, right? Like I still think nationally people are like, you can find any excuse in the book. Like if you're looking at the schedule, like yeah, Virginia's down, Chattanooga, Wyoming, this isn't Wisconsin. Like you beat Iowa, and I know Iowa's got its fair share of offensive issues. This is still the Iowa defense, and this is still Iowa. And to win back-to-back weeks, Wisconsin and Iowa, that's like name recognition that people would look at and say, okay, all right, like this is really moving along. I think that is like I know we said a lot of this last week, but like, you want to stack those, right? And you want to show that this is a real thing. And I think the arrival game is the most important. Cause I don't know, like season there's obviously implications, but just in terms of perception, that's really big.
Yeah, I think it compared very favorably to what Kansas is doing, right? Like they haven't beat a ranked opponent yet. And that's why this week, I think for them, TCU, if they get to 6-0, oh my goodness, right? Like you're talking about another huge thing because they got a huge, tough schedule coming up. TCU, Oklahoma, Baylor, Oklahoma State. Not to get too much in the weeds of Big 12 play here, but they've had a schedule that gave them opportunities. But for a program like Kansas, beating West Virginia, Houston, Duke, Iowa State, all back to back to back to back is nothing to scoff at. And it's the same thing with Illinois, right? Understand it's not Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State you're beating back to back to back, but to beat the teams you have, Virginia, Wisconsin, and if you can add Iowa to that, that's massive for this program, especially given that the two recruiting rivals, especially Wisconsin and Iowa, two programs you want to be. I think that would be a massive step forward for this program. And then I think momentum matters in college sports, Joe. I really do. And I think having that momentum going into Minnesota and having Nebraska Northwestern left on your schedule, I think if you win this game, like a Big Ten West championship, it becomes realistic. I think if you lose this game, it becomes very hard. Even if you come back and bounce and still win those other Big Ten West teams, I just think having 2 losses before you get to 2 wins in the Big Ten would be very difficult for this team to find a way to do that. So I just think it puts so much more on the table, short term and long term for this program. If you can stack Wisconsin, Iowa back to back, the momentum would be something we haven't seen in a long time for this program.
Yeah, I'm with you. And the West is interesting. I still think next, like if they win the next 2, then I think like you really like for at least for me, like that's when the conversation, or for us planning purposes, like you have to factor that into the mix. But the longer you can stay, like the longer the conversation's real, right? Right now the conversation is real enough, like, hey, Illinois can win the West. Dude, ride that. You'll see media, like we've seen Brett Bielema did his TV tour basically early this week. We've seen national outlets come in and talk, like that's the momentum you're talking about. And that momentum in part, not solely, but in part exists because the opportunity to win the West is still viable. You can argue how realistic it is or what, if you think it will or won't happen, that's fine, but it's still a viable discussion. And that's backed up both in the eye test and obviously in the win-loss. Like probably to this point, more the eye test and that because it's so early still. But yeah, man, that's the big part of this here is just the momentum, and momentum doesn't stop on the field, right? Like that's that's the other big part of this. Like, you got some recruiting momentum, and you got momentum in the sense of fans are buying in. NIL, maybe more NIL opportunities come up, and now you can bring these recruits in. This worked out perfectly, by the way, a night game. Like,
Yes.
you can bring these recruits in, and you hope, and Illinois sure has not been bashful about pushing out the ticket. Oh God, I don't even want to talk about tickets. The ticket deal, to just get people to push to get people in. That, I mean, it's just kind of all ties together, and that's what Brett Bielema said today.
Yeah, and I think we talk about ticket momentum, right? You win this game, that FOMO that Josh Whitman talked about, all of a sudden I think that's felt even more. You don't want to miss a 5-1 game against
Homecoming.
Minnesota, homecoming.
Maybe
Like,
you can get some of these grads in from the tailgate lot into Memorial. I have friends who come up and like, we're just going to tailgate.
yeah.
But maybe you get those extra. I don't know what the number is. But like, that's the FOMO, that's the momentum, and that way it's huge.
Yeah. Now, if you lose that game, I think we saw when Illinois lost to Indiana, I wrote at the time, I thought that was like a 5,000 to 10,000 ticket hit. I really do. I think the same could happen now. It's homecoming, that helps. People might be buying up tickets now, but I think you take a serious ticket loss. Like, if you can build on that, get a sellout crowd, and then find a way to win. But even if you don't, if it's a competitive game, like, I just think that momentum matters and stacking it. And I think Illinois and Iowa games probably can be picked on College Game Day. Doesn't happen a lot for Illinois.
Yeah.
I think if Illinois wins that game against Iowa, they're ranked, and that Minnesota game is kind of built up as kind of a Big Ten West semifinal kind of, even though I know there's so much moving forward with Purdue, but Iowa would almost be out of the mix by that point. 2 losses with Ohio State coming up. That's really hard to bounce back from. I still think you got to win 6 Big Ten games probably to win the West. Iowa would find that hard to come back from. Wisconsin would find it hard to come back from. We know Northwestern, Nebraska certainly aren't going to be in that mix. So all of a sudden you'd set yourself up for a 3-team race, right? If you win this game potentially. So just so much on the line, and that's so much fun. Like, there's so much on the line for this game. So let's get into it, Joey, about what this matchup is. You know, I thought Iowa was a better chance to win than Wisconsin going into the stretch. I said I think they'll win one of the next 2. Just because the Iowa's offense is so bad. It is 125th. I'm looking at offensive efficiency in the country. But the one thing Iowa has that Wisconsin didn't have is Iowa has one side of the ball it certainly can count on, and it's defense, which was one of the best in the country. And I think they're far better defensively than Wisconsin team we saw last week, but also special teams. Their special teams is strong. Illinois is not. So Illinois certainly has a huge advantage offensively. Weird to say that. But defensively, I think both these teams are great in the Big Ten, great in the elite when you talk about the country. But special teams, Iowa certainly has the advantage there, and it's just an Iowa defense that can make plays. But they're going to have to score on defense or offense, I think, for Iowa to win this game.
Getting your elites out of the way for Basketball Media Day tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, like this is such an interesting test for this Lunny-led offense.
Yeah.
For Illinois, is they haven't seen a defense like this. And to be frank, Jeremy, will they moving forward after this? I mean, you put Michigan.
Yeah.
But this is one of your 2 hardest games on paper and by the eye test defensively that you're going to play all year. And let's see what this is made of. And I do wonder what that's going to look like. And this is not going to be, I think they do fireworks for touchdowns at night. There's probably going to be some leftovers, right? I mean, I don't imagine you're going to see a lot of those, but you have any advantage offensively. When was the last time, Jeremy, that you straight up said that?
I mean, against a Big Ten opponent?
Yeah. I'm not counting the Chattanoogas of the world or whatever.
I mean, last year going to the Northwestern game, going into the season, you didn't feel that, right? Like, but even going to that Northwestern game, no one saw that coming. Like, you just thought Northwestern was so bad, but you thought Illinois was just a little bit better than that bad. Yeah, it's not often it's happened. And that's why Barry Lunny was such a big hire. And I agree. I thought Barry Lunny, Tommy DeVito were the keys to winning at Wisconsin. Those guys were great. Those guys were, I can't, I always put them together, Joey, because I don't think you can mention DeVito without Lunny, because they're both new. They're both a really good combination, and they're both a huge reason of why this offense is taking a big step forward. And I think what you've seen the last couple of weeks with this offense is the efficiency. They're getting better gradually. I think the interior of the offensive line is getting better. I think Tommy is making better decisions and getting more comfortable in the offense. I think Barry is understanding his personnel more. I know he complained about the one touchdown they didn't get after the turnover, the special teams miscue there, but like, I think he's getting better at the red zone about what he needs to do to score touchdowns or to take care of the ball in those situations. And I think they're getting better. And I think it's a middle of the pack offense, which in this game, if you can get to 20 points, you feel pretty dang good about yourself.
Yeah, I thought the red zone evolution against Wisconsin was really telling, because you could have argued they should have run a sneak at Indiana.
Yeah.
And they did that, and they did it again.
Some of the Isaiah Williams throw, like that was a great play, a throw to Chase Brown instead of a run. Like those didn't count, but I thought those were creative play calls that were different than just handing the ball out of the shotgun to Chase Brown.
Is there a sense to you, and buying time isn't probably what I'm looking for here with my words, but try to just find ways until you get Josh McCray back. And quick update, we should probably mention that it sounds like he's day to day. Brett Bielema said they'll see how his body recovers as they get closer to Saturday.
What's your? I said it during the Wisconsin post game. I thought he will be back by Nebraska after the bye week. You know, Brett suggesting something. I think maybe he's getting Iowa ready to prepare for him. Maybe now Minnesota is more in play here.
But do you play in Minnesota when you could just sit him until Nebraska?
Because Brett has talked about, I want to make sure we don't bring him back early and hurt him long term, because he's going to be the number one back next year, right? So like, yes, I don't think you want to set back. I've never thought like, oh, he's definitely going to be back for Wisconsin. I thought that was way too far or way too aggressive, and I didn't think Brett ever thought that was going to be the case. I've always set Nebraska as my bar, but maybe he can come back a week early. I'd be a little surprised if he played against Wisconsin against Iowa based on what we saw injury against Wyoming.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. And then that just gets me to wonder, like I said, do you go now? You probably do. Again, if he can go against Minnesota, you go, because that's a lot of the same themes we're talking in terms of West standings, probably are like tenfold, depending on what this looks like going into Minnesota.
And maybe it's 5 carries or something. You're not putting them out there for 20.
Yeah. But I guess my point is, like, do you get a sense that, and again, buying time is what I'm going to use, but it's not what I mean, because I think there is ways to expand the red zone, especially that like very tight inside the 5 situations, just till you get your bruiser back. And that's no knock on Chase Brown, who can fight through a lot of tackles. But I do wonder how much of this you're going to need to see when big Josh McCray comes back. He is like that. His body type is kind of built for worth the 2, see in the end zone type of guy. And it's just, and the offensive line obviously is coming around quite a bit and helping on that.
Yeah. And, you've seen the RPO used more between the 20s, right?
The draws have been, dude, those have been, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. Those have been hitting. Like we saw them against Chattanooga. We were all fixated with the RPOs. We should have been. There was a lot of them.
Yeah.
The draw against Wisconsin is what sprung the 49-yarder for Chase Brown. And he didn't get touched. Like that is, I don't remember the last time we saw like a straight up draw before this year.
Yeah. And I think you're seeing guys get better. Pat Bryant's gotten better. Like, I know we've been enamored with him because he's something they haven't had in a while. We should be like, he's got NFL potential. It's been a while since Illinois had that kind of wide receiver. But he's not dropping as many, right? And some of the catches he's making, the chemistry between he and Tommy DeVito. And then once you think Bryant's coming, they go to Hightower for 5 catches in the first half against Wisconsin. They got a third guy they can go to on top of Isaiah Williams and Pat Bryant. Last year they had 1, and Casey Washington, Daniel Barker, I guess every once in a while. Casey Washington's now the 4th wide receiver on this team. Like, that's a huge improvement. And I think the interior of the offensive line is getting way better. Alex Pihlstrom had his best game. He crushed Keanu Benton a couple times, and Keanu's kind of been built as a NFL nose tackle. I thought he was the second best nose tackle on the field at Wisconsin. But Zy Chrysler, the coaches say, had his best game. I agree with that. And the rest of the group, Pearl and Adams have been pretty good, and Palczewski's been dominant. So I think it's just a group that's gradually getting better, and they need to, because as you said, Joey, I'm looking at the efficiency stats on ESPN for defense. Virginia, by efficiency stat, is the best one they've played. I think Wisconsin will end up being that guy, but they haven't played a defense quite like Iowa quite yet, because they got a strong defensive front. Their linebackers are the best linebackers Illinois might see all year, along with Michigan. And their defensive backs are playmakers that, playing that zone coverage. They got their eyes on the ball. So it's a great test. And it's a great measure of how much progress this Illinois offense has made.
Yeah, you just haven't seen it. Like, I don't remember the last time you could say that for more than it's Indiana, you could put in that mix. I thought they moved the ball well against Indiana. I don't think Illinois' offense has been, for more than like four stretches, really like 4 series, really stressed this season. Like, for the most part, and that's a credit to them. It's also a matter of playing the Wyomings, the Indianas, the Virginias of the world, that you're pretty much able to do what you want. So, like, what's this look like when they're stressed and yards are hard to come by?
That said, I thought Wisconsin would stress them a little bit more, right?
But they didn't. Yeah, that's the other part.
That's a credit to Illinois as well. I know, Wisconsin gave up a bunch of points to Ohio State, but Ohio State's different. Like, I think Wisconsin's defense is going to be top half of the Big Ten by the end of the year. So I still think that's a notch in their belt and showed improvement. I just don't see. Go ahead.
What will you learn about the Illinois? Like, we talk about this, and I didn't think we knew a lot in big picture going into Wisconsin, but what will you learn about the offense on Saturday?
I think Illinois has an advantage potentially in physicality against Iowa's defensive line. But Iowa's got some really good athletes. Like, Lucas Van Ness is an interesting matchup, because I think like Palczewski could pancake him a few times, but Van Ness is a really long, athletic, good pass rusher. Linebackers are probably the biggest test, because Jack Campbell is the best linebacker Illinois will play all season. Wisconsin didn't have that guy this year. And so I'm really interested to see how they get to the second level, how Pilstrom and Chrysler and Adams deal with that. But I think the biggest thing is they're going to force you to make good decisions. And Tommy DeVito is going to have to make good decisions throughout this game. And he's done that recently. But the thing about zone defense is they're going to give you some windows to throw into, but they also have their eyes on the ball. So I think Tommy DeVito is going to have to be very disciplined and looking off defenders, right? Like, and making sure that he's not throwing the ball in harm's way, because this team can do that. Just like Illinois. Like, Illinois does a great job of forcing turnovers. This Iowa team does it in a different way in zone coverage, but they force you to be very disciplined and make good throws. It's like how Lovie Smith wanted to do things. They're just far better at the line of scrimmage and in the trenches.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I'm trying to think of what would make me leave Memorial Stadium on Saturday and say, man, this offense, it's been yardage-wise, it's been good, but maybe we've not given it enough credit. I don't even know if enough is it.
I mean, this offense is the story of the season, right? As weird as it is to say that, we knew this defense would be good. Maybe we didn't know it'd be great. Like, I hate using the term all the time, but elite. Like, they're right now elite through 5 games. And they certainly have been through most of 2 Big Ten games, right? And I think they're going to have a really good day on Saturday against the offense they're playing. But I think we knew they would be good. The question was, how good can the offense be to help Illinois take that huge step forward? Like, if this offense were on last year's defense, they would have won 8 games, right? At least 7. If this offense, they can win 8 games, 9 games, potentially, whatever, because this offense is not only competent, but I think it's middle of the pack in the Big Ten. And that's what Wisconsin always is. Iowa tends to be, not the last couple of years. But that's what you need when you have one great side of the ball. You need the other side to play complementary football. Didn't happen last year. And if I think they've shown, Joey, that they're good enough. Right? They're good enough if they take care of the ball.
Yeah, it is pretty remarkable to step back. I know we talked about the offensive line a minute ago. Just in 5 games, I feel like we have visibly seen this offense take it. Now, I don't know if that looks different statistically game to game other than point total, but I just think we've seen this offense take a couple steps since that Wyoming game. Maybe I'm exaggerating. I don't know, but
No, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, it was turnovers at the beginning of the year, right? Deep
penalties,
balls weren't getting converted, penalties. You've seen each of those things get better and better as the season.
red zone.
Yeah, red zone.
Yeah, I think you're just seeing incremental steps, and we had talked about that, and Barry Lundy had talked about that, where it's like there had been moments where you see the shades, the outlines, the foundation of a good offense, and I still don't think they're all the way there. I think that'd be a huge stretch to say.
That
But I
said,
think
Joey, sorry to interrupt.
no, go.
They are 54th in the country in offensive efficiency, according to ESPN.
Would you would have probably taken that and run with it? Yeah, yeah. It's really, and I think there's still. I don't know how much. Like I don't know how close they are. I don't even want to use ceiling, but like I still think there's some ways to go there offensively, and you saw probably a little less of it, but there's been some. You like to see him move the ball a little bit better, get it into field goal range, things along those lines.
I mean, if you're talking about the Big Ten West, they have a top 3 offense in the Big Ten West. I mean, maybe Nebraska kind of be that, but they're gonna have to score. Like I think they just have to. Like they have talent, but I think Illinois, Minnesota, and Purdue, right? Like I like Minnesota. I like Illinois and Minnesota because they're balanced, but Purdue, I mean, they're able to throw the ball like they are and score like they are. So, but Purdue, I don't think defensively is good, even though I say that. They just played well against Minnesota. You take that top half Big Ten West offense. Absolutely. You got a chance to win the West because your defense is that good.
Say that again. Illinois might have a top. I don't even think it's might. Probably has a top 3 offense in the Big Ten West.
There you go.
It's a long way. That's what Barry Lundy was brought here to do.
Defensively, oh man, Calvin Avery talked about eating, which not a surprise, but he seems to be eating a little bit less.
Can we just say you and I both saw him? Like we don't get to see, like he's not a guy we talk to a lot, so we don't see him very often. He looked good, dude. Calvin Avery, that's as good as I've seen Calvin Avery look, and it's not even close. He looked really, really good.
Yeah, the reason, like, I don't think like even me watching games, like sometimes I'll see it on replay, but you go back and watch the film and what you had the stats, like Calvin Avery has 9 tackles, 0 tackles for loss, 0 sacks. So no one notices him. And Johnny Newton and Keith Randolph are playing even better than him. That's not to say they aren't. But Calvin Avery is absolutely dominating when I go back and watch the film. So I've been focused on him, and we've been talking about him maybe more than a lot of other people, but it's because he's been awesome. And we saw the first, I think, training camp practice. We got 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and I went over and saw the linemen because that's what I do. And I
just dreaming of being a little taller, aren't you?
Yeah, I go over and watch the line play because I love it. And Calvin, I looked at it and I think I came back to you and I said, I think Calvin's in better shape. And it's not that Calvin doesn't look like Calvin Avery, but
you have to look like as your dominating nose tackle.
But he was noticeably more svelte, and he just looked like he was moving quicker. And he's always moved quick for a big guy. And then you hear the staff talking about him, and they're like, "Hey, he's playing well. He's playing well, but we got consistency." They continue to harp on that throughout the season, but they know they're getting the best Calvin Avery right now. When you put that to Johnny Newton and Keith Randolph, that's why I have so much confidence in this defense, is because that front end is one of the best front ends in the Big Ten. And then the back end, I mean, Devin Witherspoon's an NFL player. I think Quan Martin's an NFL player. I don't know if he'll be drafted, but Sidney Brown's going to be in a camp. Like, that's a dang good defense, front and back end.
A couple things on Calvin Avery. I thought Jay Lehman's film review on him, where he's like, dude, this whole side of the play, this I think it was a counter, this whole side is done. You've got nothing over here.
Because of one guy, yeah.
Because of one guy. And that's where you're like, it's exactly what we talked about with Rod Perry. It's like, it's probably not going to. 9 tackles. Dude, you don't look. He had 1 tackle against Wisconsin. You don't look at that twice if you're just reading a box score somewhere.
He's my number 1 star of the game for me. I went back and watched the film.
I thought Brett Bielema, who was asked about him today, gave a really good compare. Because it's been very clear in talking to coaches, it's always been kind of, they praised Calvin, but they've always come back with, look, it's consistency. It's doing it. And Brett Bielema likened him to Isaiah Gay last year, where he's like initially with change, which there was last season, there's a little resistance, and resistance isn't always good because you revert back. And he said Terrence Jamison actually said it's a similar situation with Isaiah Gay, that once you get over that initial, Brett called it resistance, then you start to see an Isaiah Gay down the stretch play the best ball of his college career. And you're seeing Calvin Avery, some of it's opportunity, but the other part of it's this guy's just playing really good football. And he's complimenting Keith Randolph, Johnny Newton, and those outside backers in a way that gets very overlooked. And I understand why, if you're just looking number wise. But man, without him, we wondered, that was our probably one of our top 5 defensive questions, was what's nose guard look like? And they didn't do anything to make us feel, more comfortable. They brought in everyone they could find in the portal to play nose guard, and Calvin Avery still ended up taking it.
Can I go back? Like I wrote this about Brian Hightower in my notebook. Like sometimes you get the offseason hype about guys, right? And it just turns into that hype. Like we've seen that with Illinois basketball over the years as well, including with football.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, I got to see it. I got to see it. Well, Brian Hightower has lived up to, hey, this guy's playing his best ball. Pihlstrom is proving that, hey, he was worth the trust to put him at center and not go get a transfer.
Taz Nicholson.
I was going right into Taz Nicholson has been fantastic since the Indiana game. Like he has been really good. That was a rough game for him. I know he got the forced fumble, but like that was a rough performance for him during certain stretches. Last 3 weeks, he's been great. And then Kendall Smith, like, listen, I don't think Kendall's year is quite as good as Kirby's year, even though the interceptions are coming. He's been fortunate, but like he's been in the right spots. And since that Indiana game, the first half, he has been reliable, which is what they needed in that position. And then you have Gay Backus step up when Ezekiel Holmes gets hurt. And a guy that I think is coming around and going to be one of my keys, and probably my pick to click here, I'll give an early hit here, is Isaac Darkangelo. He's been, I think, their best linebacker the last couple of weeks, been a great blitzer. But one of my concerns, there's not many concerns. I don't think Iowa's scoring 20 points, right? I just don't think it's happening in this game unless the special teams and defense both score touchdowns. Like I do not see Ryan Walters' crew giving up 2 touchdowns. Maybe we'll cook this up later and it'll look stupid, but I just don't see it based on what we've seen from both Illinois' defense and Iowa's. But I do think Iowa's got a couple of tight ends in Sam Laporta and Lachey who are really good. And Illinois just hasn't been tested by a lot of tight ends quite this year. So, maybe Sidney's the guy covering them, which is always interesting because he's shorter, but he's certainly quicker. Maybe Quan's covering some of those tight ends. But I do think the linebackers and some of that play action stuff, they could get tested this week. So I think those guys are going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I'm with you. And it's Iowa football, right? Iowa football has tight ends, and you can say the same about Brett Bielema coach teams. Sam Laporta, you covered his recruitment to whatever degree you needed to cover it. If he's in the class of 2023, what does his recruitment look like?
Illinois offers early and they close early.
Just crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. It's one position, and 2, they've just done a pretty good job of that. Now Laporta, Iowa didn't offer until late. He was the first Power 5 offer, but they have eyes on him before that, right? Like sure. Pat Ryan probably has some connection at Highland, and probably finds a way to get eyes on him, like we're seeing with Matthew Bailey. It was a heck of a find. They think TJ Griffin's got really good ball skills. Like those are guys that they keep in touch with. They kind of monitor. They got a kid coming in this weekend, Michael Garner from Bloom. Don't know if they'll offer him, but he's an intriguing 6'7", 235 kid. They're going to get on campus. They're going to watch his film and keep eyes on him. And maybe it's something they don't act on until later. Maybe they never act at all, but they're going to be involved with it.
Yeah, it's just such an interesting change. Matthew Bailey, Jeremy, dime defender.
Yeah, because we thought Kendall Smith was the guy, right? Like when we saw that rush, and I was like, I think Kendall. It was Matthew Bailey, dime back.
Isn't that crazy? That's how Kendall Smith. Remember last year against Iowa, Kendall Smith dime, which gets me thinking, and I don't think this is the case. Could Matthew Bay, like, I just think like, okay, he was a dime last year. Is Kendall's spot open for him, or is he definitely Sydney's spot
He's
next year?
Sydney's guy. He's Sydney's guy because he's
He's
built
basically
like a
Sydney.
linebacker. Yeah, he's built like a linebacker. They want him in the box, I would imagine. But I think he's Kendall's not like the greatest quick twitch athlete, but I think they're going to want somebody like, Keontae Curry is a really good athlete. TJ Griffin's a really good athlete. Maybe they could sell that spot in the portal, man, to somebody who just wants to sit back there and ball hawk. But yeah, I think Matthew Bay would be a strong
Yeah. I mean, there's other options, I suppose, in the class of 2023 that you could. Ryan Walters, I feel like, just stands outside, like with the boombox.
Yes,
You know how, like,
transfer portal. Yeah, just get
in love stories, you always stand out with the boombox. That's just Ryan Walters holding up free safety signs outside of Kankakee High School with the stats for his free safeties.
Which, of course, we're mentioning Jair Hill, who's supposed to visit this weekend again, which is always a good thing. He's visiting a lot of places this fall, by the way. They mention Kankakee a lot, don't they? Whenever they can. Brett Bielema does that as often as he can. And it seems like Ryan Walters says, yeah, I don't know why you wouldn't want to play free safety in the system.
Yeah, it has emerged, Jeremy. That spot, I would say, is one of the, if you're going shopping in the portal right now, every position's on the table. Forget roster composition as it is. Name your 3 best sells for a portal player right now.
Running
Position.
back.
Yep.
Offensive line. Free safety.
And then I would put 4th probably defensive line.
Yeah, well, that's what's you could argue outside linebacker. It's been pretty good too. You certainly have a better sell for quarterback and wide receiver, but if you're going up against like Purdue or Ohio State, or you know what I mean. So yes, but running backs, offensive line, and I think free safety still. A defensive line, I think after this year you certainly can do that, but man, this free safety position has produced unlike any, right? Like in this, besides running back.
Statistically, I mean, that's what I thought. Aaron Henry a couple of weeks ago made a good point. He's like, Kirby Joseph's life changed because he had 5 interceptions last year. He goes, 1, you probably see a little differently. 2, it's like his life changed entirely. He got a lot of money in the 3rd round of the NFL draft. Like, that's, if I'm Ryan Walters, I'm taking all of these. Like, and you said your average annual value is what, by the way? And I'm showing that to everybody.
And Kendall's a freak athlete, or
Yes.
not Kendall. Kirby is a freak athlete. Like Kendall's not that like that, so I don't think he's gonna. I don't think he's a draft pick. But like if he has 6 interceptions to lead the Big Ten, he's gonna get looks and he's gonna have the opportunity at his pro day to impress people. And then we know Kendall's really impressive as an individual and is a mature guy. And he's probably gonna be all Big Ten, whether it's 3rd team or 2nd team or whatever, because he's gonna have like 5, 6 interceptions by the end of the year.
It's crazy. It's such a statistically. We just went on this huge thing about how his nose guard isn't, but if you're watching, it is total opposite. Where it's like this is such a statistically plentiful position in the Illinois defense, and also when you watch, they're game-changing plays.
Yeah,
right. I thought Kendall Smith's first half at least, interception against Iowa was like okay, and Illinois went and scored, and it just kind of flipped it. That's a huge position in so many ways.
All right. Do you want to do our picks click? Anything else you want to mention about the Iowa game?
At some point, like when we set our over-unders, it's like, okay, pressures for Keith Randolph and Johnny Newton. It gets boring because it's like, do we do this every week in the same way we do Chase Brown rushing yards? But the numbers are still unfreaking believable. Like those two, dude, they kind of
better hit the portal.
Yeah,
that's what I'd say.
What do you say they, just to cause anyone from freaking out? Illinois being they, yes. Not they being Keith Randolph and Johnny Newton.
Yes, I'm glad you clarified that. Illinois better hit the portal because I think Keith's definitely like I'm not reporting this, but Keith is just built like it and is playing like it. Johnny's certainly playing like it, and he's a freak athlete for his size. He's a little not as long, right? So that's where he's got to be a fit as a 3 technique somewhere in a 4-man front, but he's having a year that, man, he should be a day 2 pick, right? Like both those guys look like day 2 picks right now.
Well, I'm not signing off on that until the Northwestern game when they give Johnny Newton the ball and let him run in for a touchdown. He cannot leave Champaign until the fans and we get to cover big man touchdown, rushing touchdown.
That's all Joey wants. We were talking
That's all
about
I want. I don't ask for a lot.
Yeah, we were talking about this immediate availability, and we thought it could happen early in the season. And I suggested to Joey, I think it happens against Northwestern just to rub it in a little bit towards the end of that game.
That, which also, before we get to our picks to click, got us thinking, what other fun, like, what else would be like, oh man, yeah, they're really.
Well, we got the Isaiah Williams throw for a touchdown, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just got called back on one.
We definitely, I would very much, which I don't think you can do with jersey numbers, which sucks, but to get a big man pat, like a Nicky Allegretti touchdown, but jersey numbers and the rule in college sports, I think makes that difficult.
Yeah, who would be the guy if you could get as an offensive lineman?
Alex Palczewski. Yeah. This dude's been around forever. Give this man a touchdown.
Yeah. Anything else?
I mean, outside of just letting Johnny Newton run. I don't want to. I don't want a goal line either, Jeremy. I want
Calvin,
5 yards.
Calvin would be pretty fun.
Line him up at fullback, Johnny Newton at running back,
Bridge
good night.
Yeah, do that in the bowl game when you're playing like Kentucky in the ReliaQuest Bowl. About it,
or get like Mountis. Let Mountis go. Just put him at fullback. I've always wanted to see that on a sneak. Put like Jordan Anderson at running back. Pick somebody I don't care who it is at fullback. Put DeVito under center and just have those two run into him. They'd take him out of the Memorial State. He'd be on the Florida State Farm Center.
Push. There you go.
Chaos. I just want chaos.
Who is your pick to click for Illinois' offense, non-Chase Brown division?
When can we make it the Chase Brown division?
Can't.
He's just off limits.
Yeah, until he rushes for fewer than 100 yards. Yes, he is off limits.
Okay, so that might be next week. I think it's Tommy DeVito, Jeremy. I just think he's going to need to make some throws. I think he's feeling it a lot.
Okay, what is the bar for Tommy DeVito to win this?
No turnovers has to. I mean, one or fewer. Well, what about one or fewer?
Yeah, one or 2 touchdowns.
Probably 2 touchdowns and 175 passing yards.
I was going to go 200, but yeah.
That's okay. Fine. That's fine. Who's your offensive pick to click?
I think I got to go with Isaiah. Pat Bryant's been phenomenal, Brian Hightower, but Isaiah kind of does this. If you look at his box score, Joey, 20, 30 yards, 100 yards, 20, 30 yards, 100 yards, 20, 30 yards. So I'm playing the pattern here of that Isaiah Williams has a big day. Maybe a touchdown, gets away. And Iowa's secondary is pretty dang good. So it's not going to be easy, but I think he finds a way to get in the end zone for a big one. Our tight end picks didn't work that well.
We struggled pretty hard on those. Only one catch.
You took Ryman, right?
Yeah. Did you go Marquez? So
I got Marquez. I almost got in the end zone.
No, he got 20 yards.
Yeah. He had a good
touchdown drive.
Good block on Chase Brown. So, yeah, I probably got the edge in that one. I don't know if either of us won. And then I took Calvin, didn't I?
You did. I took Sydney. I think you won.
Sydney was pretty good, but yeah.
Yeah. Who's your go defense? I need a second here.
I think it's Dark Angel. Yeah, I think it's Dark Angel. I think he's been really good here recently. And I know maybe some of the stats, tackles, whatever, but you've seen those blitzes where he's made a big deal. I thought the linebackers were pretty dang good against Wisconsin. I know sometimes people don't see run fits, right? Like when you're watching a football game, but they've been really good at that. But I think Dark Angelo is starting to prove what the staff was talking about. Like against Wyoming, I didn't think he played very well. And I was like, well, we'll see if this works out. He's been their best guy. And didn't Bielema mention that NFL guys were asking about him?
I mean,
maybe it's a special teams guy, but like, that guy got into an NFL camp, Joey. How big of that's a huge win. But he's been really good. I think he's been very good. And I think these tight ends, Iowa isn't a very good running team, but you still have to be sound against them. So I'm going to go with Isaac Darkangel.
Well, it would be stupid to take anybody in the secondary, I think, because they might put a big number. I'm going to take like a Keith Randolph has a Johnny Newton, Indiana type game.
I don't know if anybody can have that game again.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like Johnny had like those two have been pretty.
Five pressures, something like that.
Yeah, I think those two have been pretty like nose to nose all year. Johnny had that huge game at Indiana. I feel like Keith Randolph, and maybe I'm not giving the offensive line at Iowa enough credit. I know
they're young.
Yeah. And I think Keith Randolph is just he's really playing really well. And I'm going to take him.
All right.
Also, did you realize Iowa's rushing for 88 yards a game? Iowa Hawkeye football.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
They've been fun bad to watch offensively. Yet they're still.
I do tune in.
They're still 3-2, and if they win this game, we can talk about Illinois all we want. Like if Iowa wins this game and say they have like 300 yards of offense, which I don't think is going to happen, but if they do, like all of a sudden Iowa's right back in the Big Ten West race, right? Because let's be honest, last year they were terrible offensively too, but their defense and special teams were great, so they found a way to win a bunch of games.
Will these teams combine for defense or special teams touchdown?
That's a good over-under.
Oh, I know. I'll be setting it.
Even if Iowa gets one, I think Illinois wins.
I guess I also have to set safeties too, don't I? I have to probably set a 0.5 for safety over-under.
And you know who gets credit for that is Torrey Taylor, their punter. Their punter is fantastic. Awesome. Like he was better than Blake Hayes. He's very, very good. He's probably going to be drafted in the NFL. So that's a big X factor in this game. Is yes, Iowa is going to stress Illinois offensively and special teams wise. Now, can Iowa's offense stress Illinois' defense?
I would not think that to be the case.
I don't see it based on what we've seen so far.
I do wonder what life is, kind of not a lot of love for the Iowa offense in the great state of Iowa.
No, I talked to David Eichel about that. I'd be pretty shocked if Brian Ferentz is back next year, whether it's his own accord or not, right? Like
I think it'll be pitched as his own accord, right?
I think it might be best for him to go, like a certain other coach's son. It might be best at some point to go coach for somebody else and find your own way for a little bit.
That's tough mudding over there for the Iowa
but it's Kirk's offense, right? That's what Kirk wants to run.
This is such a fascinating, Jeremy. It is. What's the date? What do you think? The 6th?
October the 6th, the year of our Lord, 2022.
And no, we have basketball media day on Friday tomorrow.
And I still got to think about that. I
know. I was texting Piper. I'm like, dude, help me. What is happening here? No one's asked, Jeremy. There's not been any, hey, do you think the doors to oven will be unlocked? I think we can go in there. And there's been none of that. It's all Illinois football right now. Like, this is insane to cover.
Illinois basketball is just a nuisance right now, man. Like, we got to cover Illinois basketball tomorrow. Like,
know your lane, Brad Underwood. Yes. It's football season.
Got Illinois, Iowa football. Right? Illinois, Iowa football under the lights on Saturday. This is what we should be talking about in the fall.
Oh, man. He won't roast you. You're fine. I'm screwed when I walk in there tomorrow.
I don't mind. We will have a coverage of Illinois basketball's media day. As always, is Derek Piper, myself, and Joey Wagner will all be there. And Joey and I will catch up again after the Illinois-Iowa game, which is going to have huge ramifications on this season and potentially for the program, Joe.
My last question.
Yep.
Will this be, not for us, the drunkest podcast on YouTube of the season? It's a late game, a big game, a Saturday night.
Yeah, check us out, by the way, if you haven't yet, the live post-game podcast. It's been a lot of fun. I love the interaction we've had on that with fans.
I've had a blast doing it. Indiana was like almost too late. May have lost some people. This has potential to be the drunkest watched podcast of our young football season here.
Have fun, man. Have fun, everybody. And should we hit on the ticket thing right away? Okay, I got some thoughts. If Joey, you don't want to weigh in, I think everyone had a point about having $75 tickets flat. Like, I think Saturday after that win against Wisconsin, I know they've had this prime game forever, premium game forever. They should have had after that, if they wanted to push ticket sales, say, fans, you got to show up. Okay, we'll give them a reason, give them a deal. And they eventually did. So 4 for 109. All is well. That ends well. But Illinois should have probably had a deal ready to go after that game, or at least by Sunday, after they got to think about it and say how big of a deal this game is, how big it's going to be for recruiting. So I think everyone that was saying, yes, if you want to get people in the door, you got to give people a chance, because it's expensive to send a family to a game, right? And not everybody can afford that. So to get people in the door, I think, is really important. They've done a good job getting sponsors to help them with this, a donor to donate tickets. I'm starting to think, Joey, there might be 50,000 there, and there should be. They need to find a way to get 50,000 plus there, because there's a huge potential moment for Illinois football.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think a lot of it was that people have been like pre-mad, and I get it. It's not, if I had to pay to do this, I would be probably similar situations. I think at some point I was just like, man, I have heard about every angle of this thing I could possibly hear. And I understand your frustration. I'm not saying there's no
page 35 of the thread. You're getting tired.
I was like, oh my goodness. I'm not saying the frustrations had no merit either. I think there was definitely some reasoning in there. But yeah, this is, for me, I wasn't covering in 16 for the Mitch Trubisky game, but this is the biggest
The Mitch Trubisky game. I love it.
Is this is going to be I think on for home games, probably the best atmosphere I think I've covered.
Yeah.
I'm really, and the night game's perfect, dude. That is a perfect, and I understand if you're traveling from out of town, you probably don't feel like it's perfect, but just from an optics, a full stadium at night or a packed stadium, I don't know, full whatever, dude, that a rivalry, Illinois, Iowa, that's big, man.
It's what, really it's what we saw at Wisconsin last week, right? It's what we see at Iowa. It's what we see in Nebraska, even through some losses. It's awesome going to some of these places and the atmospheres you see. And, we see it with Illinois basketball all the time, certainly see it with Purdue basketball, Indiana basketball. It just takes it to another level, makes these games feel different, because you can cover a great game like Illinois, Wisconsin a couple of years ago, and the crowd was nuts and you felt it, but there's 30,000 people there. Like, if you actually get 45 to 50,000 people in that stadium, like actual attendance, the atmosphere can be really good at Memorial Stadium, but it's been a while since we've seen it.
Having seen Jump Around, we saw the Wave last year. I would like Illinois to find a song tradition. I think that'd be cool. I don't know what it'd be.
Send them in. Send those suggestions in.
To Josh Whitman. Find his is probably online. Don't send them to us. I think it'd be cool. I don't. It's not make or break, and I understand why. I just Jump Around is so cool
like that, right?
That's really. I don't know what it would be.
Enter Sandman at Virginia Tech.
Awesome. That's to me, that's the next step in creating the FOMO.
Yeah, it's got
right? Like those Wisconsin kids bounced after Jump Around. Now
they stayed until there, even though it was 31 to 10 at that point. They stayed around until they got to jump and shake the press box that I thought was going to fold in around itself.
Probably need to check
Illinois.
That thing.
Illinois very high on the press box list, by the way. You appreciate
every time. I've not been to Ohio State or Michigan. It's probably my number one to this point.
Michigan's pretty good. Minnesota's pretty good. Purdue's pretty good.
Ooh, Minnesota is good. I forgot about Minnesota. I've never been to Purdue. I've always had freaking people get married every Purdue game.
All weddings.
Don't do it. If you think you got one, don't do it. Start a fight. Postpone to the spring.
It's a good way to end it. Thanks, Joey.
Thanks, man.